Good morning, everyone. This is meeting number 72 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Thursday, October 19th, 2017. I would remind everyone today that we are televised, and so I would kindly ask that you turn your communication devices, your cell phones off, just especially if the mic comes on. It sure distracts, and sometimes the noises that come out of these things when they ring are quite different. So in our first hour today, we will study the Auditor General's Special Examination Report of the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation from the spring 2017 reports of the Auditor General of Canada. We have as witnesses before us today from the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Clyde McClellan, Assistant Auditor General, also Heather McManaman, Principal, and from the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, Mr. David Bevan, Chairperson and Board of Directors, and Stan Lazar, Interim President, and Wendy Matheson, Vice President, Human Resources and Government Services. We have an opening statement from the Auditor General's Office and also from Mr. Bevan, the Freshwater Marketing Corporation Board. And so and then after that we'll have time for questions, and we may conclude about 5 minutes before the time is up. We just have some committee business that we want to do before we move into the in-camera before we move into the next hour of presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McClellan, and again, welcome to the Public Accounts Committee.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our special examination of the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation. As you mentioned, joining me at the table is Heather McManaman, the principal who is responsible for the audit. A special examination of a Crown corporation is a type of performance audit. Specifically, a special examination determines whether a Crown corporation's systems and practices provide reasonable assurance that its assets are safeguarded and controlled, its resources are managed economically and efficiently, and its operations are carried out effectively. The Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation was established in 1969 to market and trade, both inside and outside Canada, freshwater fish caught in Western and Northern Canada, as well as the byproducts of that fish. Our examination of the corporation covered the period from October 2015 to June 2016. The corporation has faced many external challenges in recent years. These challenges included considerable risks associated with a complex and changing business environment. For example, the supply of whitefish increased at the same time that Canadian sanctions on Russia reduced the number of buyers for this fish. Also, the province of Manitoba gave notice that it intended to withdraw from its agreement under the Freshwater Fish Marketing Act and therefore eliminate the corporation's exclusive right to purchase fish caught in that province.
Our special examination identified many significant deficiencies in the corporation. As a result of the pervasiveness of the significant deficiency, we concluded that the corporation had not maintained its systems and practices in a manner that provide reasonable assurance that its assets were safeguarded and controlled, its resources were managed economically and efficiently, and its operations were carried out effectively. We refer to this type of conclusion as an adverse opinion, which is the strongest negative assessment that we can give in a special examination. In several ways, we found that the Board of Directors and management failed to meet their responsibilities for oversight and management of the corporation. Specifically, we found that the board did not ensure that the corporation's strategic plan was up to date and provided clear strategic direction to management. Furthermore, management had not provided and the board had not reviewed updated risks and risk mitigation measures since 2014. Consequently, management did not have strategies in place to mitigate the significant events that affected the corporation. This greatly limited the corporation's ability to meet its objectives, make long-term commitments, and make timely decisions about its future. We found that management disregarded key controls. For example, management created positions without job descriptions and filled them without competitive or merit-based processes. Also, management disregarded the corporation's procurement and purchasing policy when it purchased certain pieces of capital equipment without a proper business case analysis. Some of this equipment was never used in the corporation's plant because it did not meet its needs.
Workers had not taken compulsory health and safety training, and that a hazard prevention program was not finalized. If these health and safety issues are not addressed, they could lead to employee safety incidents and expose the corporation to significant losses. Finally, we found that despite the recommendations we made in our 2005 and 2010 special examinations, the corporation's targets and standards for yield, capacity, and labor efficiency still had not been reviewed. This finding matters because yield is a key measurement of efficiency and production performance. The corporation agreed with all of our recommendations and indicated that it will act to address our concerns. However, because our work was completed in June 2016, I cannot comment on any measures that have been taken since then. The committee may wish to ask the corporation's officials to clarify what measures have been taken in response to our recommendations. Monsieur le Président, je termine ainsi ma déclaration.
Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Mr. McClellan, and we'll now turn to Mr. Bevan, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today, and thank you to the Office of the Auditor General for their observations and their recommendations. I'm going to speak briefly to the slides that were in the deck that we sent to you. The Fresh Fish Marketing Corporation was established in 1969 to connect geographically dispersed communities to world markets. The conditions that led to its establishment generally persist to this day. We buy, process, and market 15 million kilograms of fish coming from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and the Northwest Territories. We purchase fish from about 1,600 fishers. They are predominantly from dispersed, isolated, and predominantly indigenous communities. We have the infrastructure and the supply chains to move products into those communities to help support the fishery and the fish back out. Our average sales over the last 3 years have been $73.5 million, and we employ 250 full-time employees and 150 seasonal employees. On the next slide, there's more information about how much money we spend in each jurisdiction to obtain our supplies of fish and where we sell the fish. Key performance indicators on the following slide for the year following the special examination indicate that our profits before final payments and income tax are up. Our retained earnings have increased to almost $15 million, which is in excess of our long-term debt. We have improved our yields and improved our operational cost per kilogram. And this year, in the first quarter, our performance continues to be quite positive. We have, in the first quarter, a profit after tax of $4.3 million as compared to $2 million in the previous year. We have increased sales volumes, we have strong revenue, competitive market pricing, and we've controlled our expenses. We are on track for the to meet the corporate plan. The next slide just gives a graphic presentation graphic presentation of our retained earnings since we changed our policies in 2010. And at the bottom is the profit after tax and after final payment to fishers. The real risk that we face at this point in time is the withdrawal of Manitoba from the Fresh Fish Marketing Act. Manitoba is going to create logistical and operational and governance challenges for the corporation. They supply 80% of our fish. The Government of Canada has consulted with stakeholders and will be coming forward with a decision as to how they will respond to the changes with respect to Manitoba. In the meantime, the board and the management of the Fresh Fish Marketing Corporation are acting to secure supply, use the infrastructure for processing, maintain our revenue, and to meet commitments to customers in the world. The following slide is special exam status. I think we will skip that. There will be questions, and I'd just like to spend a few seconds on the summary. The special exam the special exam took place at a very difficult time for the corporation between October 2015 and June 2016. Board members had observed many of the problems that were noted in the Auditor General's report and had been raising those concerns with the Government of Canada. In December of 2015, the then chairperson of the board resigned halfway through his term, and as a result of that, the president took on both the duties of the president and the chairperson of the board. That led to further concerns that the board members raised with the Government of Canada. The Government of Canada took action in late February 2016. They appointed 3 new board members, myself, and one was also John Wood, who took on the duties as interim president as a result of the removal of Donald Sakeld as president at that time, pending the results of an investigation. That investigation resulted in his dismissal with cause. We are acting upon the recommendations of the Auditor General, for which we have the authority to do so. Many of the recommendations are going to require Government of Canada action, and we're cooperating with the Government of Canada in that regard. And just to wrap up, I'd note that the performance that we've recently posted is positive regarding profitability, growth of retained earnings, and support for isolated communities. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bevan. And we will now move into the first round of questioning. It's a 7-minute round. And we will go to Mr. Lefebvre. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here this morning. Mr. Bevan, you just indicated that you are. When did you start your role with this organization?
Started in late February 2016.
Okay. I realize that this audit was done previously, or concurrently. It concluded after that. I must say that this is the worst performance audit that, since I've been a member of Parliament, that I've seen. The conclusions reached by the Auditor General are extremely concerning. And what you just mentioned to us, that for a period of time, Executive Director, the chair of the board was the Executive Director. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct.
I have to say, in my community organizations in Sudbury, we don't even do that. And I apologize, I know you weren't there. However, as a taxpayer, as a member of Parliament, this is extremely absurd and concerning, I must say. I will try to keep my comments productive, but as you can see, I'm a bit aghast completely with this audit. It's seriously concerned. Now, you've mentioned my colleagues, I'm sure, from across the aisle here will ask a lot of questions, but you said that you're in a very precarious position now that Manitoba wants to pull out. So where do you see, and I'll get to the governance issues, but right now there's actually, I think, an existential crisis ongoing in your organization. And this is a Crown agency, correct? That's what I read. We all agree on that. Wow. So from what I've read, confirm to me or tell me that I'm wrong, that this Crown agency currently has an existential crisis, given the fact that where this is going. Tell me if I'm correct or wrong.
Well, if I could just respond to your first observation about the inappropriate situation of having the president be the chairperson of the board at the same time. That is actually prescribed by the Fresh Fish Marketing Act. It's in the law. Therefore,
Incredible.
there was no alternative but that. And yes, we are facing a situation where the continuation of the corporation as a Crown Corp is certainly in question. We have taken steps to secure supplies by entering into contracts with fishers and by ensuring that the corporation can continue while the Government of Canada determines what it wants to do with the corporation. And I certainly support the observations that were being made by the Auditor General at the time of the audit, because many of those observations were being conveyed to the government, which took action to remove the previous president and to replace that president. And if you certainly look at the performance since that time, things are going reasonably well.
I have to say, however, where my concern lies, just not with this audit, but the fact that there was one in 2005. There was one in 2010.
That's correct.
And we're still back here in 2017. And that is, for us, when we see this repetition. So basically, you come here, yes, we're going to do all these recommendations, we're going to follow them, and then after that, you're back here 5 years later saying you haven't done it. The comments were from the observations. The corporation's targets and standards for yield, capacity, and labor efficiency still had not been reviewed. Just not acted upon, reviewed. This is from 2005, 2010, and we're back in 2015. So what can you say about that?
Well, they have been reviewed, and there are targets set at this point in time. I would point out that some of the observations in 2005 and 2010 were acted upon, but they fell by the wayside. A lot of our practices on human resource hiring and dealing with that were not followed. Our practices on procurement of equipment were not followed. They did continue with the retained earnings, obviously, from the information that I presented to you. So some of the things were followed through on, but others were in place but not followed.
Okay, so where you are now, what have you done to? Like you said, it's been reviewed. So what is the plan? What have you put in place? And that was a question that the Auditor General's office wanted us to ask you, and certainly that was a question that we were going to ask you in any event. Where are you guys as of now?
We have reestablished the human resources policies regarding hiring of people. We have done the risk evaluation and put in place mitigation for those risks. I might turn to Mr. Lazar on some of the issues around yield, etc. But action has been taken to do that, and I think the results demonstrate that. The results from last year were audited by the Auditor General.
The financial results is one thing, but the governance issue is obviously pervasive here. So yes. we have two different. We have two major. Well, we have two. It's a complete separation for me. Basically, when you have a Crown agency that is governed this way. And like I said at the outset, our community organizations are looked as if they're governed to a better extent. But Mr. Lazard, if you would comment on where you guys are now to put the recommendations in place and to make this obviously to address the major governance issues that you have currently.
I don't know that it's my place to talk about the governance issues. I'm the interim president from an operating perspective.
Yep.
So I'll address your answer about the yield and the measurements and how we manage that. As identified in the report by the Auditor General, the corporation was not effectively measuring the yields in 2010. Since then, the corporation recognized that. The standards that we do use for yield are recognized as a significant operating issue that affects our profitability. And since that time, we do have a system and a process in place. And in the response by the corporation, it details that we do review those metrics as far as yields, and by specific species, we have yields that are measured, and our operations staff, management, and all the key people in the plant operations do have that as part of their performance management as we speak.
How much time, Mr. Chair?
So we'll come back to you, Mr. Lefebvre.
Thank you.
We'll get back. Mr. Sopak, please. Welcome to our committee. And
Thank
I know
you.
you are from Manitoba, and this is not a new entity to you. You're very knowledgeable on this freshwater fishing.
And as we all know, Mr. Chair, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Yes, I have a number of commercial fishing operations in my constituency who sell to the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation. And in a previous life as a fisheries biologist from Manitoba, I dealt with directly with the FFMC. One of the things I found a little bit surprising about the discussion was just the use of the generic word fish. It's quite clear you're basically a walleye marketing organization, right? What proportion of the income of the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation comes from the walleye, or what are called pickerel?
That is the biggest source of our profitability. However, I would point out that we've made progress with respect to whitefish. We had a significant.
I understand that, but right now in the dollars and cents terms, the walleye are like 75% of your gross sales, right?
So as far as profitability, walleye is the most profitable
Right.
species. However, volume-wise, whitefish is the most
Right.
volume the corporation
Right.
sells.
Right. So, but again, you have a range of from high-value species like walleye, going down to whitefish, then pike, and then your mullet and carp, and so on. Then the various products from each of these species, such as roe and so on, each with a different value, right?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. But it's safe to say you have an over-reliance on walleye.
Walleye accounts for a large portion of our
Yeah.
profitability.
Yeah, it's well, I know it's the biggest. It's well over half, if not more. Now, the Manitoba government has chosen to withdraw from the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, instituting "quote unquote" marketing choice. So it's quite clear once there's marketing choice and private buyers in the market that they will target the high-value walleye primarily for purchase. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
So honestly, it's not my role to comment on what the Manitoba government believes. What
No,
we are
this is what I believe, that the buyers will target walleye. I mean, that's only common sense. They're the highest value fish.
I'm sure that's possible.
I can guarantee it. Now, the thing is, once you have competitors for high-value walleye from road-accessible fisheries, like Cedar Lake, like Lake Winnipegosis, like Lake Winnipeg, that will take a very large bite out of the corporation's profits, potentially. That is a risk that you have to think about, correct?
Yeah, I think that we can. That is a risk that we have to worry about. That's why the corporation has, in evaluating that risk, has developed a strategy of entering into contracts with fish suppliers. And if you're a fisherman, you need to make a decision as to if you're going to work with the corporation and sell all your fish, or are you going to move outside that and try to live off walleye and worry about the other species on your own.
Yeah.
So that's a decision that they have to make, and we've been entering into contracts to try and mitigate that risk that you've raised.
Yeah, don't mistake me. I'm not trying to be pejorative here. That's a tough environment you're facing, and like I said, I'm sure the private buyers will target the fish that you want, and they'll offer prices that will be very attractive to the fishermen. One thing also I didn't hear anybody talk about, both the auditors or you, was the issue of fishery sustainability. The Lake Winnipeg fishery right now, which the FFMC depends on, it is a very fragile state. I mean, basically FFMC has relied on Lake Winnipeg for a significant portion of its income. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, well, it stands to reason, close to Winnipeg, road accessible, and so on. Do you pay a premium for the fishermen to target large female walleye?
We do not male or female, but we do have different prices for sizing of all our species.
So large fish are given a higher price. Is that fair?
It depends on the species.
But walleye, I'm talking walleye now.
We did increase walleye prices recently.
For the large fish.
For larger fish.
Yeah, see, that's devastating from a sustainability standpoint, and I'm shocked that you don't consider that a risk. Targeting the most valuable individuals in a fish population is tantamount to raping that population. And I know fish management is not your concern necessarily, but If and when that Lake Winnipeg walleye fishery collapses, what are you going to do then?
So, I mean, our business plan, we work closely with the government of Manitoba and the Water Stewardship Branch there to understand the fish stocks. And the plan that we have before the government of Canada right now recognizes that the fish are sustainable for the foreseeable future. And we really don't have anything in place over the long term.
The recent science disputes that, and I've read it. Lake Winnipeg has collapsed before, and it will collapse again. So that is a risk that you need to, I think, really assess. The other risk is the allocation of fish stocks. What's developed on Lake Winnipeg, for example, is a very high-value recreational fishery that is far more important to the Manitoba economy from a dollar and cent standpoint than the commercial fishery. And public bodies allocate public resources based on the highest and best use. Have you factored any reallocation of the walleye fish stocks into your risk analysis?
No, we haven't.
Okay. How much time do I have, Mr.
Minute and a half.
In terms of the non-quota species, the off-quota species such as mullet and carp, what are your plans for marketing them? And will you be able to pick up the slack financially if and when your access to walleye stocks has declined?
We have aggressive marketing plans for a number of those species. I'll use carp as an example. So we have a very lucrative market for carp roe.
Right.
We've done a lot of good work and earning high margins on that species. Although whitefish isn't in that same category, we sell whitefish roe and tullaby roe. Are very profitable and provide high margins to support the profitability of the corporation.
Yeah, I must compliment you on the carp marketing that you have done. And again, just going back to the notion of fishery sustainability, anything we can do to reduce the carp populations in Manitoba is a very good conservation move. So I congratulate you on the carp. And also, in terms of mullet, what are your plans for mullet? I understand that you have some really good markets in New York. Will you going to be able to expand that for your, the mullet cakes that you make and that kind of thing? Okay, done.
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Lazar. You can finish.
So yes, New York is a large market for us, and when it comes to mullet, again, we have various marketing plans in place to ensure that species is profitable for the corporation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sopak. We'll now move to Mr. Christofferson, please. Mr. Christofferson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your attendance. I don't know an awful lot about fish, but I know a lot about auditing. And I'm with Mr. Lefebvre. This audit is a jaw-dropping evisceration of this entire operation. It's the worst that Mr. Lefebvre has seen. He's been here 2 years. It's in my top 3. I've been here 14. I've been here 14 years. This is among the top 3 worst audits I have ever seen in terms of how a Crown corporation is being operated in this country. What an absolute mess. And I understand that you can only take so much responsibility because you've only been there so long, but you're the face of the organization. You got to wear this. So the first thing I'd like to know is how many, by numbers, of the board members and staff from pre-2016 are still around?
There are 2 board members still around. Staff from pre-2016, actually, that's an interesting question because what happened during the leading up to the audit was a number of staff who were there in the past were removed and replaced following a system that was not acceptable. We had to correct that starting in 2016 with the new interim president, which was Don Wood at the time, had to correct a number of deficiencies with respect to the staff and replace the capacity within the organization following a proper procedure. So that was done. We had to correct issues related to improperly purchased equipment. We had to deal with a badly managed whitefish inventory. All of that took a little bit of time to correct, but we got it back on its feet. And I think, again, you can see from the results in terms of profitability and earnings and getting our costs under control that we have made progress.
Yeah. So there's still board members who were around from before, and they're still on the board?
There's two, yes.
Really? I find that very surprising.
They were among the people, however, I would point out, that were raising issues with the government of Canada that led to the appointment of new board members, the replacement of the president who was responsible at the time, etc. So those are the people who were acting to inform the government that they had a problem, and the government acted in response to that.
So you're suggesting we kept the good ones?
We kept the ones who were in it for the long haul.
Okay. One question and then more of a comment, because I mean, I'm with Mr. Lefebvre. It's like, where do you begin? It'd almost be easier for us to talk about the things that were done right, because it's a much, much shorter list. I want to ask before I make, to you in a second, Chair. 4 minutes, beautiful. I just wanted to ask the auditor's office, if you would turn to the slide, the profitability slide, please, that the agency has presented. And then I'm looking at page 8. Page 8, figure, exhibit 1 at the top of that page. And if I understand correctly, you were factoring in some of the value differences of the currency, which my words, but suggested kind of skewed the results. So this is beyond my academic competency level by a long shot, but I'm looking at that chart and then I'm looking at theirs and I'm asking you to help me do apples to apples. Are they saying the same thing?
So let me respond quite simply. I think they do cover slightly different periods of time. The purpose of this chart is to the corporation's chart is to reflect the current trend in where they're going and the rising profitability. We looked at the chart that we had, starts when we did the audit and goes back.
Right.
The principal message that we were trying to accomplish is what you indicated, is that one of the drivers of the profitability that the corporation experiences is in relation to the exchange rate.
Right.
And all we simply wanted to raise was the fact that exchange rates go through cycles. And if the exchange rates become unfavorable for the corporation, it will make it more difficult to generate profitability if the responses are not done to the types of operational issues we identified.
Very good. Thank you. That's what I thought. So it's not quite as solid as it might seem, but really that's getting into the details here. When I stand back and colleagues, when I look at this thing and I kind of oversight, I'm looking at this chair and I'm thinking like 80%, by the way, I hope I've got time, is there really a possibility that you can exist going forward after you lose 80% of your business? Is that viable?
Well, I think that that's assuming we lose the 80%. We are signing contracts with suppliers in order to secure a supply of fish to keep the infrastructure.
Right, fair enough. Sorry, I don't want to be rude. I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm going to run out of time. I'm down to 1 minute. Good. What I wanted to say, Chair, seems to me that going through the details of all the things that are wrong is like an exercise in futility. We know it's a mess. I don't know that they're going to survive. I mean, we hope they do if they're doing good work on behalf of Canadian people. But I'm almost inclined, Chair, to say we almost need to give them a period of time to go back and find out whether we've even got an entity here that we're operating on. And if they do have a plan where they're going forward, then it makes sense to go into the details of some of the numerous issues that are raised here. But I'm just thinking to go through it all now, they're either not going to be here in a short period of time going forward, or they're going to exist in a very different shape, or come up with a different business plan. So what I'm saying is that we will no longer be auditing apples. We're going to be kind of auditing oranges. And I'm suggesting maybe I just leave it with you, Chair and colleagues, but maybe we need to leave a period of time, let them get their act together and come back to us with the entity that they think they can sustain going forward. And then we'll talk to them about auditing that and commitments and recommendations rather than doing it now because they're in such flux. I leave that with you, Chair. Thanks so much.
Well, our responsibility is to take a look at the Auditor General's report and to make certain that the strategy that the that the entity has is a strategy that's going to satisfy Canadians, satisfy the committee, but more importantly, maybe even satisfy the Auditor General.
My only point, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. I would only respond, sir, that the business plan may suggest that it's not sustainable going forward, in which case it's moot. And if they do come back with a different kind of organization, then we're going to want to be getting commitments from them based on what we're hearing at that time, vis-a-vis the existing structure they have, rather than what we think it might look like. But
thank you.
But I leave that with you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. We'll now move to Ms. Shanahan, please. Ms. Shanahan, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for all parties for being here this morning. And I do have to respectfully, I agree with you, David, on one side, that for this organization here, for the people that are in front of us, you know, we don't need to badger them with things that were out of their control. But I think there is lessons to be learned here about dealing with Crown corporations, and that's where I would like to dig a little bit further. So, if I may, and you know, I realize that there could be some confidentiality and so on involved here, but we need to get to the systemic problems that allowed this debacle to happen. And it's only lucky that foreign exchange, it's a difference in the U.S. and Canadian dollar, that allowed the corporation to come out with nominal profitability at the end. And business risk will happen. Suppliers come and go, clients come and go, but you need to have the management in place to be effectively deal with that. And what concerns me is that there were not only vacancies on the board for extended period of times, there was problems with the staffing, and there's a potential for conflict of interest. So I just would like to ask the Auditor General's office initially just to give us their comments on what could have been done to avoid what looks like, I'm sorry to use the pun, some fishy business going on here.
So let me respond a little bit to that question. You know, my first reaction when you ask, you know, what could have been done, we audit at a point in time and look at the status of systems and processes to determine whether they're in place. We don't necessarily go through a hindsight exercise of what could have been, would have been to produce a different result. So the number one response I would have to the question you've asked me is that I think the governance and appointments issue we're finding is a pretty important and systemic question that needs to be properly addressed and resolved in order to ensure that there are competent, sufficient board members in place and a process to ensure continuity. So I would draw to the committee's attention that this isn't the first special examination in which we reported on problems with appointments, problems with governance challenges. This report does allude, as Mr. Bevan rightly indicated, to some of the challenges in the Act and the actual governance structure that one of your colleagues had noted. So that would be the first, you know, sort of lesson that we're beginning to amalgamate in totality that is important to learn. You need to get that right to set the tone that can allow the rest of the operations to be effective.
So what would you suggest for we as a government, because it's an arm's length operation. In fact, it's only fortunate that we've got 3 audits in front of us, actually. Well, fortunate, it's because they kept coming back and you needed to re-examine them. How can we be sure that board positions are being properly filled and people don't have their hand in the till?
Well, I think in terms of the question of appointments process, you have an opportunity. A number of recommendations have been made by us in relation to gaps that exist in the appointments process. You'll now have a series of those that I think you can follow up on in terms of the recommendations and what action has been taken in relation to those. Okay,
and just another question, because on the OGO committee, we're looking at the whistleblower protection legislation. I think there'll be a report coming out fairly soon. Can you make any comments about that? In the course of your audit, people are telling you things, and that's what I'm sensing. People were saying things, people were aware of deficiencies, of problems, of conflict of interest. Does that come into your audit? Are you able to use that information?
So I think I don't have anything to comment on in relation to that.
Okay, thank you. And just then for the management in front of us. Can you talk to us then about, are there still vacancies on the board? How are those filled? What does it look like now?
We still have vacancies on the board. We don't have, I would prefer more board members, to say the least. I've been asking for appointments to take place. And I've been asking for a broader array of experience and skill sets. So we're still on a skeleton crew at this point in time. And there's some reason for that, I suppose. The Government of Canada has to make a decision as to what they're going to do with this Crown Corporation in light of the fact that there's the removal of the Manitoba fishermen from the Fresh Fish Marketing Act. But as long as we are responsible for continuing to manage it and giving them time by maintaining the value and the profitability, I would really prefer to have more board members.
Thank you, Chair. How much time do I have? Okay, I'm giving it to my colleague.
Mr. Chen, please.
Thank you. So I just want to point out that I understand in terms of not having board positions filled and perhaps not having a strategic plan that is updated. These are issues that we do come across, unfortunately, every so often. However, when it comes to the creation of staff positions with no job description and then filling them through a process that is not merit-based and that is not competitive, that is very concerning. It's also very concerning that equipment is being purchased, some of which is then never used. So to me, these are serious issues that need to be addressed. You noted, Mr. Bevan, that the special examination took place at a particularly difficult time. I'm not sure what we would describe this upcoming time when you are going to lose Manitoba, which contributes 80% of your fish. You have staff of 250 full-time, up to 150 seasonal workers. What is the plan? How are you going to deal with such a huge impact on the business you do?
Well, the plan that we have implemented is to secure supplies of fish by entering into long-term contracts with fishermen for all of their fish. So we don't enter into contracts for people to sell us part of their catch. What they sell us has to be something we can profitably use. So that's what we're doing as an interim measure, and that's what it is, because the Government of Canada...
And you're going to be competitive enough to secure those contracts?
I think so. We are securing contracts, therefore I guess that answers itself.
Thank you very much. We'll hopefully get back to you. We'll now move to Mr. Nuttall, please, for 5 minutes, second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bevan, Mr. Lazar, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to pick up where Mr. Chen was there. But first, can you tell me in like 15 to 30 seconds, what is the mission statement of your organization?
To maximize the returns to fishermen.
Okay. And when I look at the competition that's coming into the marketplace, the withdrawal of Manitoba, the potential private sector increasing their ability to secure supply and eventually get that to the market. Is your business plan, or is the business plan that you've provided to the Government of Canada, does it include an option that says closure of the Crown Corp?
That's not something that I could possibly do in my current position. I have a fiduciary obligation to the Crown Corporation, and closing it is not exactly doing that. That's a decision for government to sell, close, do some other kind of governance around the corporation. We will take whatever direction we get from the government, and if it's still to be a Crown Corporation, we will endeavor to implement that recommendation. But those are decisions that are best put to the government.
So the issues that were outlined in the audit are twofold. They're the governance of the entire structure, and the second one is essentially all management of either assets, risk, those potential liabilities coming down the road, production. Like essentially the issues that were found were throughout the entire organization. I will give it to you that the first step is to secure a strong governance structure in order to be able to set the rest of the organization on its feet again. But with the changing with the changing landscape, do you feel that there's a value for your organization continuing in light that essentially what we're looking at is going to be the government competing with the private sector?
No, I understand what you're asking. Again, I think that's a question that has to be put to the government. We will keep the wheels on it and keep safeguarding the assets for the Canadian public, pending a decision from the Government of Canada. I would note, though, that Air Canada was a Crown corporation competing in the private sector for a period of time, and they did that in order to maintain routes into isolated communities, and we're in the same kind of situation.
So the question and the conflict in the position that you're in right now is, who are you actually working for? Are you working for the Government of Canada? Are you working for the citizens of Canada? Or are you working for the fishermen in the area? And I would say that with the competition that's coming down the road, you have a decision to make. And one of the decisions you need to make is who it is you work for. If you work for the Government of Canada, it's easy to say that this should continue as long as it's profitable. If you're working for the interests of the citizens or the interests of the fishermen, I think you need to look yourself in the mirror as an organization and make a recommendation to the government that includes an option for the closure of the Crown Corp, and that would deal with all of the audit items that have been outlined.
You have 2 minutes.
To me, this is pretty cut and dry, so I'll pass it back to Mr. Sobak, who...
Sir, what's the current debt of the FFMC?
It's in two phases. We have operating debt. That's something that we incur every year, so that allows us to pay fishermen without having to wait.
Yeah, what's your
to sell.
long-term debt, though?
Long-term debt's $12.5 million, and our retained earnings is almost $15 million.
Okay, but if there's any debt, if the corporation was wound down, the Government of Canada will have to pick that. The Government of Canada guarantees it, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, regarding final payments to the fishermen, some have said that the final payments were actually too high, so that there wasn't enough capital reinvested in the plant. I've toured the Transcona plant, and I've seen the deficiencies there. Does that plant need major refurbishing, and has that refurbishing not been done because final payments were too high for the last number of years?
In 2010, the policy around final payments and retained earnings changed. As you can see, the retained earnings has gone up in that period of time. Since that policy change, there's been significant investment in the plant. I don't know when you were last there, but we've upgraded freezers, etc.
In terms of these contracts that you're writing with the fishermen, do they say they have to sell all their catch of all species to you, so you're precluding them from actually accessing the private market with those contracts? Is that correct?
That is correct in one sense. If you are selling, I should say, a mix of species, it's one thing to say, I'll high grade my pickerel, but then I won't have a market for anything else. You have to make a decision as to, is it better for me to sell it all or to the corporation or not?
Thank you, Mr. Sopak. We're going to go to Mr. Area, and then we come right back here, so you'll be able to finish that perhaps. Mr. Area, please, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bevan, I have to say that partially I agree with my colleague on the other side, Mr. Nuttall. Maybe in 1969 there was a relevance. During that time, it was relevant to set up a corporation like this, but in these times, I don't know why federal government has to be getting involved in this business. Anyway, you mentioned that that is beyond your scope. However, before becoming the chair of this board, you were the Associate Deputy Minister for the Department of Fisheries. So you were aware of the issues of this organization, correct?
That's correct.
So what did you do before you became the chair of this board?
What I did before I was retired, before I became the chair of this board.
No, during your time in the Department of Fisheries.
I retired in 2014, and I took this responsibility on in 2016.
Yeah, then in 2010, the Auditor General identified issues. So between 2010 and before you retired in 2014, what actions you took?
The board members changed. We moved away from representative board, where each jurisdiction had a representative on the board, and we moved to skills-based for the federal appointees. That did take place. We changed the policy regarding...
During your time that you did change, you had a new president who created positions without any official descriptions and appointed people and that all took place, I guess, by the person who was put during that time.
That's correct. Yeah, that was done, and that was raised by members of the board with the Government of Canada. The Government of Canada did take action in 2016 to remove that person and to place new board members in the corporation and to have an interim president.
Who was the person other than the president responsible for purchasing capital equipment which was never used?
That's supposed to be, capital equipment is supposed to be purchased with the approval of the board. That was not the case, as I understand it. The equipment was purchased with a focus on yield, but not thinking about the end product and whether it would be acceptable to the buyers. It wasn't acceptable to the buyers, therefore the product that was being produced was unsaleable, and the equipment wasn't used and eventually had to be sold and replaced.
And incurred loss on that?
The equipment was purchased outside of the normal process.
No, when you said that it was the equipment was sold back?
We had to, after I came on, we had to find a way to sell the equipment and replace it with equipment that produced product.
And was there any loss or profit from the gain of from the sale made?
Loss.
There was a loss. So the corporation has a policy, anything over $75,000 in capital needs to be approved by the board of directors. The particular equipment that you're referencing was purchased without acknowledging or respecting that policy, and then president went ahead and bought that.
In addition to the president getting fired, was there any other action initiated for violating the norms?
So the board, I can't answer that question.
I should point out that we operate under the FFMA and the Financial Accountability Act. We don't have the authority to hire or to fire the president. We don't have the ability to appoint to the board. So the board at the time was raising issues with the Government of Canada about these actions that were taking place, unfortunately, during the time of the special investigation.
Your answers, I think, leads me to the same thing, whether the existence of this corporation is relevant in today's times, where every small thing you will have to come back to the federal government for its approval, including, I understand that the final returns to the fishermen is determined after the annual audit by the Office of Auditor General?
No. The final payment to the fishermen has to be consistent with the plan, and it has to be consistent.
I'm sorry, I'm reading from your financial report. It says that returns to the fisher, freshwater uses payment structure that determines initial and final payments. It goes on to say, after the annual audit by the Officer of the Auditor General of Canada, freshwater determines final payments from the pooled receipts.
Okay, that is correct, because we need to have the books audited so that we have a very clear understanding of our financial position before we send the fishermen the money.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back to Mr. Nuttall or Mr. Sopak, and just for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to have to suspend this part of the meeting before we go into the next part. Mr. Sopak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just so I'm clear on these contracts, Mr. Bevan, the contracts that you sign with the fishermen, they have to market all of their catch with you of all species. Is that correct? So if a private buyer says, I'd like to buy a few tubs of fish from you for the restaurant trade, that fisherman cannot sell to that buyer. Is that correct?
If you're signing a contract with the Fresh Fish Marketing Corporation, you get services. You get ice, you get totes, you get EI administration, you get all of that, and in exchange for those services and for us taking the fish, you sell to us. We won't turn down fish from somebody who sells a little bit to a private group, but that would be outside of contracts, and it would be outside of a situation where they'd be eligible for final payment, etc. So there's going to be some nimbleness in terms of purchasing fish.
Yeah.
But if you want to sell fish to us and get all those services and final payment, you need a contract.
Okay, yeah, again, I find that a little difficult to take. In terms of the Manitoba pullout from the FFMC, we have a mini experiment going on with the Saskatchewan pullout from a couple of years ago. So right now, what proportion of Saskatchewan's commercial fish catch is marketed by the FFMC?
Over 95%.
Okay, so the fishermen themselves made a choice to market through you, which is fine.
They didn't have a choice in one sense. And that's what is of some concern. The people in the northern isolated indigenous communities, no one's on the wharf trying to outcompete us.
Right. No, look, I'm well aware of that, and the fact that you market fish from remote areas within an area about the size of Europe almost is an incredible logistical challenge, and that was one of the reasons that the corporation was set up in the first place. Given that some of the anti-FFMC fishermen are also saying that once quote unquote we get rid of the FFMC, new fish plants will emerge from built by private investors. To your best of your knowledge, did that ever happen in Saskatchewan after they pulled out?
No.
Not that we're aware of.
No.
Okay. So that didn't work. How many countries does the FFMC market to?
I would say a dozen, 12, 15 different countries throughout the world.
What proportion of the market is in the United States?
Probably at least two-thirds.
Two-thirds. Any issues with the NAFTA negotiations that are going on now? Is that a risk to FFMC sales to the U.S.?
Based on our initial analysis, we don't believe it's a significant concern for the corporation.
Is that because the volumes are so small relative to other fish marketing in the U.S. from the saltwater, from marine sources?
Yeah, the freshwater fish, I mean, it's not in the scope of a lot of the NAFTA negotiations.
Okay. How much research and development are you doing in terms of increasing your markets for off-quota species?
I did reference before that we're looking at things like carp, but we are looking at numerous marking and new product development opportunities as we go forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming today. We understand the challenges that you face. We thank you for your service. You've come in a very difficult spot, and probably this is, hasn't been your best day ever appearing here in Ottawa, but you're in a tough position, and we thank you for the work that you're doing, trying to make a bad situation better, and thank you for your service. Thank you for coming out of retirement to try to make it better. We are going to suspend, and we are going to go in camera for a moment. So if you are here, we would ask you to exit fairly quickly because we have some committee business that we have to discuss before our next guests come in. So we are suspended. We want to welcome you back to meeting number 72 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Thursday, October 19th, 2017. We'll apologize for the little delay for our guests this morning. We had some committee business, in-house business that we had to discuss. In our second hour today, we will again be considering Report 2, Detecting and Preventing Fraud in the Citizenship Program from Spring 2016, reports of the Auditor General of Canada. In fact, we have called this meeting to review the responses that we have received from the Department following our previous report on Chapter 2 of the 2016 report of the Auditor General. As our witness, we have Ms. Marta Morgan, Deputy Minister of Department of Citizenship and Immigration, Lou Fernandez, the Director General, Citizenship and Passport Program Guidance Amended, and also Heather Primo, the Director General, Case Management Branch Amended, and Marianne Hubers, Director, Citizenship and Passport Program Guidance Amended. We have an opening statement from the Deputy Minister before we proceed to questions from the members of Parliament. Ms. Morgan, welcome again to our committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Je vous remercie de me donner encore.
I'd like to thank you once again for the opportunity to appear before your committee in order to further discuss the Auditor General's Spring 2016 findings regarding citizenship fraud.
To answer any of your questions following my brief opening remarks. Mr. Chair, as you know, in May of 2016, the Office of the Auditor General presented a number of findings regarding the detection and prevention of fraud in our citizenship system and made 7 recommendations for improvements in the areas it examined. Along with the Canada Border Services Agency and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, IRCC agreed with the Auditor General's recommendations, and last year we shared our Management Action Plan with this committee. Stemming from the Auditor General's recommendations, this committee provided 8 recommendations of its own, to which responses were provided earlier in the year. Our Management Action Plan established 23 actions to be taken to improve fraud management, including some activities that were scheduled to be completed by the end of March of this year. Mr. Chair, I am very pleased to report that all actions in the IRCC Management Action Plan have been completed and ongoing activities continue to receive appropriate attention and resources. For example, in the spring of 2016, we updated the instructions on creating, updating, and maintaining problematic addresses in the global case management system and centralized the responsibility for the maintenance of such addresses within a single division of our department.
To mitigate the risks identified by the Auditor General, the instructions in the standard operating procedures to systematically enter and update problematic addresses are very detailed. Quality control exercises have subsequently demonstrated areas where staff are adhering to the standard operating procedures and areas for improvement, which have led to further refinements in processes. We have made improvements on managing fraud risk through internal controls and information sharing, and we're committed to continuously monitoring and improving fraud controls.
Sharing with the RCMP and CBSA by formalizing practices, by issuing operational bulletins and instructions, and by updating memorandums of understanding. Although the Office of the Auditor General did not find a significant amount of fraud in the citizenship program, it did find that IRCC was unable to demonstrate the effectiveness of our fraud controls. Since the release of the OAG's report, we have made significant progress in assessing the effectiveness of these fraud controls. All of the risk indicators have been reviewed using a statistically valid sample of files to verify if they were consistently applied and effective at detecting fraud. We found that risk triaging was consistently applied in 85% of the cases. We have eliminated the risk indicators that were not effective. We have adjusted the remaining indicators to further improve their efficiency, and we have ensured that they are being consistently used. Also, quality assurance exercises have shown that our officers' decisions are typically sound and that they demonstrate good compliance with fraud detection procedures. Mr. Chair, the ongoing implementation of some provisions of Bill C-6 will help us to better detect and prevent citizenship fraud in ways recommended by both the OAG and this committee. For example, the bill's introduction of a document seizure authority, expected to be brought into force by the Governor and Council next spring, when required regulatory amendments are expected to be in place, responds to the Auditor General's finding of inconsistent practices for dealing with suspicious documents. These provisions will be supported by regulations that provide officers with the process and terms that must be followed once a decision is made to seize suspected fraudulent documents, and with the authority to share the seized documents as required with the CBSA. Mr. Chair, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada takes citizenship fraud and program integrity in general very seriously. The Office of the Auditor General has noted that IRCC has implemented a number of measures aimed at better detecting and preventing fraud in its programs, including the Citizenship Program, and has continued to conduct various program integrity activities. In accordance with our Citizenship Program Integrity Framework, IRCC has established baselines to monitor refusals and fraud controls, and as I mentioned earlier, we have reviewed and assessed risk indicators to verify if they are being consistently applied and effective at detecting fraud. We have also established a new random selection process to continuously monitor existing fraud controls and identify emerging fraud. En plus des contrôles de la fraude examinés par la
In addition to the fraud controls examined by the Auditor General, IRCC has access to CBSA's border passage history checks to review applicants' entries to Canada. And we've established expertise in each region to deal with exceptional cases and to better detect patterns of fraud. Mr. Chair, my intention with this brief opening remarks has been to offer committee members a broad overview of this topic. My colleagues and I would be very pleased to respond to questions from the committee and to go into greater detail on any topic that members would like to further explore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morgan. And just before we go into the first round of questioning, I just want to make it very clear, and we are televised today, so for Canadians and for other members of Parliament, for the guests that are here. The Auditor General has given a report in relation to immigration fraud. Our committee did a study and invited you to appear as witnesses before that study. In our study and in our report, we listed a number of recommendations. Those recommendations went to you, and I think the reason that you are called back again today, more specifically, is because I don't think that our committee could not clearly determine if 3 of our recommendations that we issued in that report were actually being addressed or were being addressed to the satisfaction of our committee. Our committee is a vital arm of accountability and transparency, making certain that that the Auditor General's recommendations are addressed, but our recommendations also are addressed. And so for that reason, we have the call back today. So thank you for your comments, Ms. Morgan. We'll move into this first round of questioning. Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for being here with us again this morning. And this is something that our committee is adamant about, that not only do we do our best to meet all departments that are being audited by the Auditor General, but when we present a report and we have recommendations and we want to see an action plan and we want to see responses to our recommendations, that indeed they are satisfactory responses. So let me get to the heart of the matter, which is recommendation 6. Which calls for, by 31st of March, that the IRRC provide the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts with a report outlining how the Citizenship Program Integrity Framework and its associated baseline were established, and how the department will monitor the refusal rates of files. In your response of 2nd February 2017, you give a explanation as to why the department feels that a detailed report cannot be provided to the committee, and I would like to hear more on this. And
Thank
Yes.
you. Mr. Chair, first of all, let me just say that I regret the fact that the committee did not find our responses to be sufficiently detailed, and I hope that our presence today will allow you to provide the additional information that you require. I would like to assure you that we have taken the report of the Auditor General and the committee very seriously, and we have implemented all of the items outlined in our Management Action Plan. And specifically, on recommendation number 6, let me provide an update on how the Citizenship Program Integrity Framework was established. It was established in accordance with existing departmental frameworks related to fraud, program integrity, and risk management. It was validated by an independent third party who is familiar with risk frameworks. We reviewed the Citizenship Grant Program from the perspective of program risks and identified the following 4 key risks. First of all, entitlement fraud. Secondly, identity fraud. Third, procedural error. And fourth, decision-making error. And for each of these factors, we considered the impact and the probability and how to mitigate each of those risks. We've also put in place a governance structure as part of the development of the framework, whereby there is oversight by the Deputy Minister and a 3-year work plan which is approved annually in order to ensure the implementation of the framework that has been developed.
So I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan, please let me understand. You're giving us an update now, but what is it that prevented you from providing us with a detailed report?
It was, Mr. Chair, it was our intent in our report to provide you with the information that the update had been developed and that had been developed according to the recommendations of the Auditor General. My intent today is to provide you with more information. I'm hoping that that will be satisfactory, Mr. Chair, and will really answer your questions in more detail.
Okay, please continue.
She's inviting you to continue and make it clearer.
So there were
the actions taken.
There were 2 other questions, Mr. Chair, that were asked. One is how the baselines were established, and we established baselines using the overall refusal rate for citizenship applications and also for cases associated with risk indicators. And we monitor these refusal rates by looking at monthly data to see whether there are any deviations from the norm based on those indicators.
Chair, how much time do I have? 2 minutes. I pass it to my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Ms. Morgan, let me start by some good piece of news that during the last 2 years, the efficiency of your department has increased considerably. From when I started as Member of Parliament about 2 years back till today, things are going better and better. However, this past summer, from 3 visa officers, I should say that there have been a spike in rejection rates of visitors' visa without any reason of why it should be. Anyway, coming back to this particular audit, I'm concerned about recommendation 4. You did mention that you have an agreement with RCMP, CBSA on information sharing that will prevent fraud. The people who have committed fraud from obtaining citizenship. However, RCMP has noted that there's a problem in the implementation of notification process because information regarding criminal charges is gathered by non-RCMP policing partners at municipal and provincial levels. And police services have the discretion not to share information with IRCC due to operational requirements. So what are you doing to address those things?
Mr. Chair, as we noted, we have significantly improved our processes regarding the sharing of information and criminal charges against permanent residents and foreign nationals, and working together with the RCMP. The issue that has been asked about is really related to the RCMP and the RCMP's collection of information. What I would say on that is that the RCMP has taken important steps to promote the sharing of information with respect to permanent residents and foreign nationals. charged with a crime. However, there are some limits to their ability to require that information, particularly because it is gathered by non-RCMP policing partners, and there is discretion that police services have regarding sharing information with the IRCC.
Thank you, Noah. Our time is up. We're going to go to Mr. Christofferson now, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for your attendance today. I appreciate the answers now. Still haven't heard why we couldn't have heard some of that detail in the response the first time. Part of our messaging here today, make no mistake, is also to let all the bureaucracy know that we read these things. As a result of the Gomery inquest and following the sponsorship scandal, the recommendation was to double our analytical ability, and we've done that. So we get a massive amount of responses from departments. We read them. And when we're not given answers in their completed fashion, people can expect to come back here. I think question 4 and 5, at least so far, has been dealt with. My greatest concern is your response in recommendation 6. In the last sentence, I don't know whether you ran this by your legal department, but I can assure you this is not acceptable. To make a statement, as such, a detailed report cannot be provided to the committee. That is not acceptable. Period. Full stop. Now, I'm a former Solicitor General of Ontario. I understand security. I understand confidentiality. The previous paragraph to the sentence I just read says, the Citizenship Program Integrity Framework is an internal document that contains information about investigative techniques used by the department to detect fraud and therefore cannot be disclosed or shared in the public domain. Fair game. I'm with you on that. It's the next sentence. You, as a department, do not have the power to say no to a committee that asks for information. Parliament is supreme. Parliament has the power to summons persons, papers, and records. And I've been around here long enough to have this tested, and I've been here long enough to have the parliamentary law clerk at the end of the table in camera with the top legal person in a department berating them because they had the audacity to tell the department, because something was captured by one of our confidentiality laws, they couldn't give this committee the information they wanted. And the law clerk was there to tell that lawyer that they were giving wrong information to their deputy and department. Parliament is supreme. We are a committee of Parliament. We asked for an answer. To tell us we can't have it is not on. Is not on. Ever. So, what do? We find a way that you can give it to us in a way that protects what needs to be protected. So the simple answer to this is that you would offer to us an opportunity for an in-camera briefing on these matters if we wish. That is the correct and acceptable answer. So, number 1, and Deputy, think clearly. I need to hear what your opinion is of my interpretation of the powers of this committee as they relate to information we want from you. And then secondly, in detail, I would like to know whether you are offering us such a briefing in camera.
Morgan.
Mr. Chair, I would like to reiterate that I regret very much that the committee did not find our responses to be sufficiently detailed to the questions that were asked. And the questions that were asked by the committee really related to how we developed our and how we are monitoring our improved processes and our improved frameworks for the detection and prevention of fraud in the citizenship program. And I'm happy to provide more information on those questions of how they were developed and how they're being monitored today. With respect to the reports mentioned in response to the committee, this was intended to illustrate the mechanisms by which the department is following up on the Auditor General report. However, release of this information could identify investigative techniques and priorities. It could increase the vulnerability of the program to fraud and could expose external partner agencies and our investigative techniques. It is those internal reports to which we referred that could jeopardize our investigative techniques and increase the potential for fraud in the program that were referred to in the response. But in terms of the process for how we're developing and monitoring these frameworks, how we're tracking them, and how we are tracking the processes that we've put in place, we're very happy to provide additional information as the committee requests.
I'm sorry. It's disappointing that you read most of that. I still did not hear, Deputy, whether or not you accept the fact that Parliament has the right to summons whatever persons, papers, and records we choose. And I have asked if you would give us that information, and I, for one, am more than willing to go in camera because I understand what you're saying. What cannot happen is that the bureaucracy cannot say to Parliament, you can't have this information. Look, I was a defense critic for a period of time, and we ran into issues all the time where there's security matters. We deal with them. You go in camera. On some super sensitive things, you put together all-party agreements on how we're going to do this. I remember one process, I won't get into it, where we selected some of our most respected members of each caucus to be on that committee to take the information. We had to find a way. What was not acceptable, ever, is for the bureaucracy to say to Parliament, you can't have something. Now, colleagues, if we need to, I'm going to move we adjourn this, call the parliamentary law clerk in here and go through the whole process, and maybe we need to do that for this committee. We haven't done that yet. But I assure colleagues that the rights that I am saying to you that we have are supreme and they will hold. And I'm still not hearing the deputy say, yes, I'll give you that information. We just need to work out the process by which the matters contained will be kept confidential. I need to hear that, or this does not get resolved, at least from me.
So let me just say this. We've dealt on a couple of occasions here to the deputy where, you know, an Auditor General does a report and, you know, departments come before this committee and they say, we recognize the Auditor General's report, we've accepted all the recommendations, and 3 years later, nothing. I mean, they may have an action plan, but same problems come up in audit after audit after audit. Now we have a case, just as Mr. Christofferson has said, where, you know, we've issued the report with recommendations, and it is problematic to the committee that the answer we get is that we can't disclose parts of the process on the fraud items. If you would have said that, that might have been acceptable. But there was never, as Mr. Christofferson indicated, an opportunity for you to ever do that in camera or in a place where... So I would just straight out ask you, do you still believe, or do you believe that you cannot disclose that information?
Mr. Chair, there is considerable information that we can disclose related to how we've developed these frameworks and what our monitoring systems are, what our governance is around those frameworks. There is information that it is not possible to disclose because it would provide information into our investigative techniques or those of our partner agencies and potentially increase the risk of fraud in the program. And that is the information to which we referred to in our report to the committee. We wish the committee to understand the kind of information that we were collecting and using for investigative purposes, but there will be some information that simply cannot be disclosed.
That's not acceptable, Chair. And I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I'm just letting you know this is not going to fly. I've been here before. This is not going to stand. My advice to colleagues is that we suspend this meeting, call in the parliamentary law clerk, and have the law clerk tell this committee what our powers are. And I guarantee you, we're going to be right back here after that parliamentary law clerk talks to the departmental law senior law person who gives the proper advice to this deputy about information that they do not have the right to keep from Parliament. This is big.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. We may come back to that. Mr. Nuttall has a comment, just so that all parties have had an opportunity.
I guess I just want to clear up what Mr. Christopherson's saying. I think that the message that comes across, Ms. Morgan, is that you don't trust parliamentarians in this room to hold the confidences of the information, hold the confidence that we actually are required by law to hold. So is that the case, that you don't trust members of Parliament that the public trusts?
Mr. Chair, we are hoping to provide more information today on the questions that the committee requested of us, which is questions about the process under which we develop these frameworks, whether they exist, how we monitor them, how we track them. There is some information in the reports that were mentioned in the internal reports that were mentioned in our report back to the committee that really do relate to investigative matters, techniques used by our partner agencies, and also data and information that could be used and could result in increased fraud in the system. And that is the kind of information that is generally not released under any circumstances because of the potential to increase fraud. But to the general nature of our frameworks, to what's in there, to how we track it, to how we monitor it, to how we adjust as we find new information and get new information from investigations
Morgan,
that are ongoing, all of that is information that we would be happy to discuss with the committee.
So your position is that there is information that you cannot share with members of this committee because it could lead to an increase in fraud in your system, meaning that there is information you're not willing to share with the Parliament of Canada because you are scared that we will be part of some sort of fraudulent loop, whether it is the dissemination of information that should not be or actually participating in the process. That's what I'm actually understanding from what you're saying.
I would just ask a question that comes from the table, and then we'll go back to Ms. Shanahan. So you say there's some things that you would disclose and there's some things that you can tell us. So the question that I would ask is, can you explain, for example, how refusal rates are monitored? And are there controls on this process? How are they monitored?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have a monthly monitoring of refusal rates of file. We have monthly extracts of data, and we monitor the refusal rates every month. And that allows us to see whether there are any deviations from the norm. We also look at the risk indicators and look at refusal rates in cases that have certain risk indicators to see whether those risk indicators are showing the refusal rates on those are showing any difference. Lou, would you like to add anything to that in terms of the monitoring?
Then we'll go to Ms. Shanahan or Mr. Area, whoever, but go ahead, Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the refusal rates and the baselines that we have established through our processes, what we have, when we talk about refusal rates, there are two pieces. One is around general refusal, so we're not necessarily talking about fraudulent issues in those general refusal rates. They can be anything from not passing the knowledge test, language requirements, residency requirements. So refusal rates are a way of establishing what's the overall baseline around refusals. The more specific indicator that we've established a baseline is regarding the particular fraud indicators that we are using and how many refusals are based on those indicators. So what we've managed to do over the course of the last number of months is to establish a baseline of overall refusal and then look at our risk indicators and say, this is our baseline refusal rate based on what we believe is fraud. And we're looking at those on a monthly basis to see what the kinds of results are in order to take action, mitigate risk, change indicators as needed, and make adjustments as we go. Thank you.
Mr. Area. Or Shanahan, sorry.
Thank you.
The two have split.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. So let's just get back to really why we're here, why we've called you back, because it's certainly not uncommon that we look for clarification from entities when we're not satisfied with responses and so on. So we do not mean in any way to cast any aspersions on your work, but what is really the principle here at work is that when we ask for a response, we cannot have the answer that was provided in to response number 6. So I would like to put a motion. It was suggested earlier by Mr. Christopherson that we do have the law clerk come in to address this committee onto what its rights are, because you know, it's IRCC today, but it could be another time, another place, another entity, another set of circumstances. So can I put that on the floor?
I think that that's a motion that we can deal with right now, but I'm not ready to adjourn this meeting. I think there's still questions that we can ask of the Deputy Minister. I don't think we need to shut down the meeting early. But are you making a motion then, Ms. Shanahan?
Okay, so just that we be clear that we're not here to focus just on your group, but it has come up, this question, because of the answer that you provided to us. But on that note, around the investigative techniques, because what concerns me when I see refusal rates is whether they're abnormally high or abnormally low. What is going on there? And for that, we do need to understand what the investigative techniques are. And as my colleagues have said, we are certainly able as parliamentarians, we have tools at our disposal to be able to receive that information. So you may not be able to share that with us now, but I would like to know more about the refusal rates, what your baseline is, and how you monitor that.
Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, when we're speaking about the general refusal rates and the baselines that we've established, the baselines are in fact have been established since the 2015-16 fiscal year, and they are relatively consistent. That's in terms of the total and as a percentage of refusals. So as I mentioned previously, knowledge, language, residence, prohibitions, these are the types of issues that would have come up, and the refusal rates are in that range of about 2%. Of total new citizens, applicants, 2% of the new citizens have been refused on a variety of different reasons. And in some cases, they can be more than one reason for refusal. So that's a fairly innocuous general statistic around our refusal rates.
Okay, and Chair, Mr. Chandra, Mr. Arias.
Mr. Chair, I think we need to suspend this at this moment, because the question that has arisen is what's the power of the committee, what is that can be disclosed to the committee, or if there's anything that the department can withhold from the committee. I think the questioning of the current witnesses will not be completed till we get that thing resolved.
All right. Yeah, can I ask one question first?
Yeah, please, of course.
And then we will entertain the motion to adjourn or to suspend. Right. To Ms. Morgan, and again, this question comes as we have to build a report. Would you say that due to new practices that you have implemented, out of the Auditor General's report there were recommendations, out of our report there were recommendations, you've said that there's been some new practices, you're monitoring closely, your monitoring has changed. Would you say that due to these new practices, information sharing with partner agencies has improved? And if the answer is yes, I see nodding heads, how?
Mr. Chair, I would like to say that we are very appreciative of the report of the Auditor General and of the committee report in this area. We have made very significant improvements in our program integrity overall as a result of the Auditor General's report and as a result of this committee's report. And I do want to leave the committee with that message. In all of the areas that the Auditor General looked at and that the committee looked at, we have made significant progress, including information sharing. On the issue of information sharing, we have much better system in place with our partners at the Canada Border Services Agency and at the RCMP. The CBSA shares information with us routinely on ongoing investigations. We have better processes in place for that. We've improved our security check process significantly with the RCMP, as well as our information sharing with them. So across all of the issues that were raised in the Auditor General's reports, whether it's problematic addresses, whether it's having the right risk indicators and really being able to test whether we've got the right ones, whether it's being able to share information with our partners, we have made significant progress in all of these areas, and actually feel that the Auditor General's report and the work of this committee has really pushed us to set a much higher bar in terms of program integrity in this program, and which we are very appreciative of.
Thank you. So you are telling me then, the way I understand, because of new practices that has come out of the Auditor General's report, you have, without question, seen an improvement in information sharing amongst the agencies.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We have a motion to, Ms. Shanahan moves a motion to suspend or to adjourn.
Well, I think that was
What's that?
suspend. Yeah.
To suspend.
Yeah.
So we have two, really. We have two motions. We have a motion that we bring a law clerk on the issue, but we also have a motion to suspend or to adjourn. So I'm going to ask Ms. Shanahan on her motion asking for the law clerk to appear before our committee at the earliest convenience. Do we have a seconder? Do we need a seconder on that? All in favor of that motion? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And we also have a motion from Mr. Christofferson, I believe.
Adjourn this, I would just suspend it pending the information we'll get from the parliamentary law clerk. So I move we suspend this hearing.
All right. So we have a motion to suspend. All in favor of suspension? That is carried. I want to thank our department for attending and for being here. Callbacks are not pleasant, and we take the job of the committee serious. Canadians expect that there is going to be Auditor General's reports and follow up to it and change. And so thank you for indicating that there is positive change. We will ask you then to leave, and thank you for your attendance. And committee, I'll ask you to stay, and we will perhaps go back in camera for a moment.